Hi there folks, this is Sam Healy from the Dice Tower. Last year at Origins 2014, I was approached by Patrick, and he came up to me and he basically said, "Hey Sam, I know that you're a Bible teacher, I know that you enjoy playing games, and I got this game that I think you're going to like, and it's about spreading the church in the first century." And so he sat me and a few other gamers down and taught us how to play the game. And I'm skeptical about Christian-themed games. I am a Christian, and I'm skeptical of Christian games because usually they tend to sacrifice mechanics for the theme. I'm always skeptical because they look good sometimes. They have all of the glitz and the glamour, but then there's not very much game there. There's not anything that's really engaging or anything like that. So while I was intrigued when Patrick came and talked to me, I was very skeptical. And so I sat down and he began to teach the game. And by the end of the game session, I was hooked. I would like to mention that this is an unpaid preview, and the reason it's unpaid is because, you know, the Dice Tower is not doing paid previews anymore. But before that decision was made by Tom, I had already talked to Patrick about doing this for him, and so I wanted to really come through on my word. So I asked Tom if he would allow me to do it, and he graciously said that he would. And so I was very pumped to do that. So this is a unpaid preview. Not getting paid to do this. This is just something that I want to do because I believe in the game. Okay, so here I have a 4-player version or session of Commissioned set up and ready to play. I've used the introductory scenario, Acts of the Apostles, for the setup here. Now, I do want to mention here, first of all, that this is not a final production copy of the game. This is definitely a prototype. Down here in the corner, we have the church members. Church members are represented by white cubes on the board, and here is a stack of them because you're going to be adding more to them throughout the course of the game. Here, these colored pawns are the actual player pieces that represent the different apostles that whose personas the players are taking on. Here are some of the original church members in Jerusalem. Here are 2 missionary pieces, these 2 gray pawns. Over here we have missionary stop and church growth stop pieces, which will come into play from some of the trial cards, which are right here. Over here we have the church extinguished tokens that will be placed on the different candles, which represent the churches from Book of Revelation. That's a really cool little thing there. And then up here we have the faith cards, least expensive and least powerful, and then most expensive, most powerful throughout the course of the game. And then here we have the message die. Neat little booger this thing is. We'll get to that in just a few moments. Then we have the actual player cards here, and the player cards are actually pretty cool because it gives you places to actually put your prayer cards down. It gives you a reminder of what the special ability of your apostle does. It gives you a short synopsis of the personality of your apostle, and then it also gives you an order of play, so it keeps you very on point there, and it's very user-friendly. Each player is given a deck of cards that corresponds to the apostle that they took, which has their special ability on it. And then to begin the game, each person takes two faith cards and adds them to their deck, bringing their deck total to 8. And then they shuffle it and draw 6 cards. Now at this point I do want to take a closer look at the player card again because it does have the order of play there. So I want to just go through step by step the order of play, and then I'll show you what one turn might look like, and then we'll get to my actual thoughts on the game. Alright, so the order of play here, first of all, the players draw 6 cards from their stack of 8 cards that they're starting the game with, and that is the arm phase. You're arming yourself for the spiritual battle that's about to take place. And then we come to the live phase, which is the second phase there. And then that live phase is done at least 2 times. So everything in that live phase is gone through twice. And then after that, the mature phase where we buy new faith cards happens. Now the goal of the Acts of the Apostles scenario that I have set up here is to have a church in every city on the board by game end. Now the way the game ends is, first of all, it can end positively by every city having a church in it. And if that ever happens, boom, the apostles have won, the church has been spread. Another way the game can end is negatively. The last trial card is drawn. When the last trial card is drawn, that live phase is completed, and by the end of the live phase, if the victory conditions of the scenario have not been met, the apostles lose. Another way that the game can end is if there have been 5 churches extinguished, and that's what these candlesticks represent. Whenever a church, an established church, is now empty, completely empty, whether by choice or by something that happens here on the trial card, an extinguished marker is placed. And once all 5 of these have been placed, the game ends, apostles lose. Each round of commissioned is actually very simple to play out. At the beginning, you arm your apostle. You draw 6 cards from your deck into your hand. Then we go right to the trial phase, the trial portion of the live phase. So that means we take a trial card and we flip it over and do what it says. All right, so here the card says flood. And the flood says that we remove a church member or a missionary from every church in the region. And when that says every church in the region, that is where the region in which the elder pawn is residing. So at the beginning of the game, we're all in the same area. So we have to choose right off the bat, do we lose a church member or do we lose a missionary from every church in the region? Well, there's only one church in the region right now, so we would lose. Let's say a missionary. We can get missionaries back later through different cards that can be played, and so forth and so on. So we lose a church, we lose a missionary right off the bat. All right, so that goes into our discard pile, and we go on to the next portion of the live phase. The next portion is pray. Trials bring or push the saints to pray, and so we each would secretly and quietly choose what cards we will offer for the share phase. Now, before we go on to the other phases, the other parts of the live phase, I want to touch on the message die, because right now is where it would actually be taking effect if you were indeed using it in your game. The rules actually state that first-time players should disregard using this because it really does hamper the efforts of the apostles. It's better for you to get the idea, the feel of the game first before you start using the message die. Well, why? Why would you say that? Well, at the beginning of the pray phase, when we're all quietly praying and putting our faith cards on our boards for the elder to have the choice of using in the share phase, we would roll this die. So we roll the die and we come up with a 4. Then we would go to a table that's actually in the rule book, and 4 to 8 messages arrive. Players may talk with the elder during the share move and grow actions. No problems. So a 4 through 8, 50% chance, nothing actually goes wrong. But if you roll a 1, spies infiltrate the church, and there is absolutely no talking, and we actually have to remove one church member or missionary from the elder's church. Then, if you roll a 2, messages are intercepted. We cannot talk to each other during the pray, the share, move, or grow phases. So the elder has to make all those decisions on his own. If we rolled a 2, we would have to roll again. And if we roll a 1 through 4, we would place a mission stop on the elder's church. If we roll a 5 through 8, you would place a growth stop on the elder's church. So again, you can already see, I think, how hampering this die can really be. So the first few games, you might want to stay away from it. So first couple of games, skip using this die, but after that, I think it can really add another level of difficulty to the game. Now, during the pray phase, we see that Barnabas has offered one of his special ability cards, which says that we can remove a church growth stop from any church in the region. And then he has also offered one of the other two faith cards that he got at the beginning of the game, which says that either on the top it says you can add one church member to any church, or you can add Matthew and Mark to the New Testament canon. All right. Then we have Peter, who has offered one of his special ability cards, which provides two faith during the mature phase where we buy new faith cards, or one of the two faith cards that he got at the beginning of the game was remove a missionary stop from any one church, or he can add Romans, 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians to the New Testament canon. Then Paul added in his two, which his special ability is that he can remove missionary stops. Paul was the quintessential missionary, so that's his special ability. He can remove missionary stops if they ever happen. Or he can remove one growth stop from any one church, or add those guys to the New Testament canon. And then John here, his two abilities is, first of all apostles may remove up to 2 cards from their discard piles. This is a way for you to thin out your deck to get the basic cards that you have at the beginning of the game out, so the more powerful faith cards will be coming up more often. So that's what John's special ability is able to do. Your faith is strengthened. And then here his other card is remove one growth stop from any one church, or add 1st, 2nd Timothy, and Titus to the New Testament canon. So those are the different cards that the elder, the first person, is able to choose from. Now remember, during the share phase, he can only pick and apply 2 of those faith cards. So some of those are not useful, but some of them are, because if you remember, Barnabas here said we could add a church member to any one church. That's useful right now. So the elder would probably choose that one. Another thing that you have to have according to the scenario at the end, not only do we have to have a church in every city, we also have to have found all of the pieces of the canon by the end of the game. So since these other cards aren't really useful, the top portions, we might want to use them to find some of the canon. So let's say that the elder chose to do, first of all, add a church member to any church. So we would do that. Blap. And then he wants to add 1st and 2nd Timothy and Titus to the canon. So we would come down here to where 1st and 2nd Timothy and Titus are, and we would place that card right there, maybe even tuck it under the board, just to show that we have written that part of the canon. Then the share phase is done. Now the elder has the choice to move. You can make 2 moves during your turn. The elder chooses. And since we're either not using the message die or we are able to talk, you can actually give advice. But basically there are 2 kinds of movements that you can have within the move phase. There is either a fellowship move or there is a missions move. I'm going to explain the missions move first. Basically, in order to make a missions move, you have to have a population of at least 4 in the church. And the reason is because you're going to be taking people from that location and actually starting a new church in another location. So here at the beginning of the game in Jerusalem, we have much more than 4, no problems whatsoever. So the elder will choose, let's say I'm the elder, I'm going to say, well, first I think we need to go down to Caesarea. So I'm going to move myself and 4 church members down to Caesarea. And maybe one of the other guys say, hey, I want to come with you. Okay, so we'll go down there as well. Then, as the elder, maybe some other people encourage me to do this. Let's move up into Jericho as well. So we take some of these guys and move up there as well. Now remember, church growth is important, and you can only grow the church if you have at least 3 members there. That is including pawns of the players. So here, I think this is probably a good thing. Now, these are 2 missions moves. None of these were fellowship moves, because fellowship moves only happen between 2 established churches. So, for example, let me just give an example of a fellowship move right now. So let's say I wanted to take one of these church members and just move them back here. They have to be adjacent, and they both have to be established churches. You can just freely move church members between one established church and another adjacent established church. That's a fellowship move. So those are the 2 kinds of moves, but you only have 2 moves to make anyway. So at the beginning of the game, you're probably going to make, your majority of your moves are probably going to be missions moves, because you're wanting to spread the church, you're wanting to get that spreading going early on, because remember, if this runs out, you've done. If you haven't accomplished the scenario's objectives by the time this guy runs out. Now, once the move phase is done, we go to the grow portion of the live phase. And that means we can add 1 church member to every church that has at least 3 members in it. So right now, all of them have at least 3 members. Now, the elder does not have to add new church members to a church that could grow. It's his choice. He doesn't have to make that decision, but he could if he wanted to. At the beginning of the game, and really if you have the ability to, I don't understand why you wouldn't, but there may be some cases when you wouldn't want a church to grow, so you wouldn't add. All right, so at this point though, we're going to take and add 1 church member here to Caesarea, 1 in Jerusalem, and 1 in Jericho. So that is church growth. Then the elder staff would pass to the next clockwise player, and they would become the elder. Okay, so now we go back up to the top of the live phase, and we draw another trial card, because trial is the first thing we do in the live phase. So we draw a trial card, and this one says, church is fed to lions. Well, that doesn't sound very pleasant now, does it? We have to, twice now, we have to lose 1 church member or 1 missionary in the place where the elder is. So let's say that Jerusalem is where the elder is. Let's say purple was the one. Twice we have to lose 1 church member or 1 missionary. Well, there isn't a missionary here, so we would have to lose 2 church members. They go back to the pool. Then this symbol down here says that only 1 person can be left in this church. Everybody else has to go to adjacent locations, and they can be non-established churches or churches. It doesn't matter. You can do either one. So in this case, I think it would probably be pretty cool if, hey, let's start a new church in Samaria, because that is legal. There's only 1 person left here. We've gone to an adjacent location, and we're good to go. So this kind of helps in a way. Now, it was bad because we got pushed out of Jerusalem, but it was good because we started a new church in Samaria. And that's one of the really cool thematic parts about this game. The trial cards are bad. They're trials. But adversity can result in triumph. We go to the pray phase, where we all pray and place faith cards down. And then we move to the share phase, since we are foregoing the message die, but you understand that. We go to the share phase, and the elder, who is purple here, will be able to choose. Now, there are actually a lot of good cards we have down here. John played a card that will add 1 church member to a church. That might be pretty cool, because Samaria isn't going to grow at the end of in the growth phase, so maybe we want to add a church member there. We don't have any growth stops, but here we have another add 1 church member to any church, and then we also have add a missionary. Remember, we lost that missionary last time? Well, maybe we can get him back this time. So maybe the elder will choose. Okay, well, I'm gonna play Peter's card here that adds a church member, And yeah, we're going to add it to Samaria so that Samaria actually does grow. And then we're also going to play add a missionary. So we can place that missionary wherever, where he is. So now we have the opportunity here to move other people. Elders can choose. So let's say that he wants to move these people over here to Damascus and start there. That's one move, and that was a missions move. And let's say that we already have a church established here. Let's go ahead and make another missions move and come up here to Nazareth. All right, so we still have our churches here. Now, we do want to be careful, though, because some of these guys, like we've seen, are going to be negating church members. And if we only leave one behind, and let's say it comes up that we have to do once in every church in the region, that's going to really hurt us, because that means we would have to lose this and this, which means that 2 churches would be extinguished by just 1 trial card. So we're almost halfway to defeat. So usually, more often than not, you probably want to leave more than just 1 person behind. So, okay, well, with that in mind, let's see if we want to do this a different way here. Let's say we want to move this person back here to Jerusalem as a fellowship move, and then we'll have this one missions move to Damascus. Now our bases are still pretty covered. Then we would move to the grow phase again. Again, this is the second time in this live phase. So we can take our church members here. Do we have more than 3? Or 3 or more? Yes. 3 or more? Yes. 3 or more? Yes. 3 or more? No. 3 or more? No. So these 2 churches would not actually grow, but that's okay because they're kind of in the corner. We don't actually need them to grow, we just need them to sustain. Now, since we have gone through the live phase twice, we go to our first mature phase. Now, our mature phase is where we take the remaining 2 cards that are in our hand. And for the number of faith that is on your cards, you are able to purchase new faith cards to be put into your deck. So, Peter here has 2 cards that are both worth 2 each. So he has 4 faith that he can spend. That means he can buy 1 4 faith card, which is a really powerful faith card, or he can buy 1 3 and 1 1, or he can buy 2 2s. Now, if you buy only 1 card from a deck, you would take the top 2 and then choose which one you want and put the other one on the bottom. But if you're choosing to buy 2 cards from 1 deck, you just draw the top 2, and that's what you've got. And that's the mature phase. Those cards would go into your discard pile. Now, at the beginning of the next round, when we come back up to the arm phase, where we're going to be drawing new cards, the only cards that are going to be left is only 2 in your draw pile. So then you're going to have to draw those 2, take the ones that you purchased and played last round, shuffle them up, and then draw 4 more. So then you have 6 cards for this new round of play. And then you go through the live phase twice as we did in the first round, and the game continues that way until, like I said before, the trial cards run out. There are 5 extinguished churches, or you have planted churches in all of the cities, and you have found all of the New Testament books of the canon. So I hope that was at least a decent explanation about how you can play or how to play commissioned, and I hope you can see through that very brief rundown the complexity that can be there, the camaraderie that can be there, the cooperative nature that is definitely there with commissioned. I think it is a very strong thematic game, and I think it's also a strong mechanical game as well. It has a lot of modern mechanics in this game, and that's one of the things that I like about it. There's deck building. There's the deck building mechanic in it. There are player powers that are in the game. There's the puzzle aspect to the game where you're trying to find the most efficient route in spreading the church. There's also the mechanic of having to choose the cards, many of the cards have 2 options on them. You can't do both, you can only do one. So there's that tension of having to choose what is the best option to do. There's also scenario packets in there. So there's a lot of freshness to this game Commission, and that's one of the things that really caught my eye about it. It had a freshness to it that I thought was very appealing. And that's one of the reasons why I went ahead and decided to do this preview, is because I believe in this game. One of the things that definitely needs to be said in this preview is that I think this game does have a somewhat limited market to it. It's definitely going to appeal more to Christian gamers than non-Christian gamers. And I think Patrick realizes that and understands it. He's very passionate about the target audience that he's shooting for, those Christian families, those Christian bookstores that are carrying some of those more archaic games. And we get this game in there and it kind of opens their minds a little bit. So there's a little bit of a forethought nature to what Patrick's doing, I think. But I think that should kind of still be a side thought. This is still a good thematically produced, historically produced game that everybody should give a nod to. I'll just go ahead and say it now. This is going to be the first game that I will have kickstarted on Kickstarter because I do believe in it that much. And again, this is my opinion of the game. Don't take that as gospel. Look at the video, read all the stuff that Patrick has put together on the Kickstarter, and see if it's going to be a game that you're going to be able to fall in behind. This has been Sam from the Dice Tower. See you on the flip side, folks.